Dun, dun,
He
dun.
doesn't know.
Oh, quick. We'll do it live. Yeah, I still can't post links on Facebook until Tuesday, so we are live.
I should have never inadvertently given you the floating head idea.
This is God.
It's fucking with me.
Have you seen Rick and Morty, Matt?
Well, yeah, I've seen Rick and Morty.
Show me what you got.
Dude, I'm just saying, in my younger years, it's a good thing they didn't have like this accessible green screen.
All right. Dun, dun, dun. Dee. All right. So let me bring up my little soundboard of fun. And then we will start the show. So if I can get everybody to mute, we will start this little ditty. I'll mute myself here.
Once a week, three laddies come together from distant lands to talk about Bigfoot, Martians, ghosts, time travel, chupacabras, and the Sweetwater legend.
I think we're all huge fans of the Sweetwater legend.
This is the Fortean Slip with your host, Chris York.
Say no to Quaaludes? Fuck no. Wait a minute. No. Say yes.
Co-host, Steve Alcorn.
Like, take a break, shut my camera off, go
Yeah.
upstairs.
And sometimes special guest, Matt Knapp.
Just
Right,
accept it for what it is and just watch it and enjoy it.
They don't know who you are. They don't know what you want. If you're looking for entertainment, you may have come to the wrong podcast. But what they do have is a very particular set of skills.
There are no cows.
No cows.
No.
No cows were harmed in the making of this incident. We often wish that your relationship went much like that of the praying mantis.
I thought that was a reference to everything being green.
Yeah, sure you did. Carry on, gentlemen. I'm going to do something else for a little while.
Wow, Steve, would you like us to stop the program so you continue to do your shit?
You're about to witness the strength of creep knowledge.
Good evening, and welcome to the Fortean Slip. This is episode 123, the Rick Dyer Freezer Hoax, brought to you by Steve Kulls. 50 large. Now, yes, that picture right there, Steve.
Yeah.
That one right there. Steve's got it. Look at Steve go. Yeah, we were going to do this one the week before last, and I got kind of screwed up with scheduling, and I had to push Steve forward, and then I forgot about Super Bowl, and yeah, that whole fucking mess. But here we are to talk about the wonderful story, the whole breakdown of what happened. What year did that all fucking take place?
2008.
2008. Fucking 12 years ago now.
We're still talking about
Hey,
it.
before we get into that, has anybody seen that fucking documentary on Netflix, the Pharmacist?
Not yet.
Has
Not
anybody
yet.
delved into? Oh my god, I plowed through it the other night, and I talked about this on the show on Saturday. If you have not seen the documentary on Netflix, The Pharmacist, I wholeheartedly recommend that you sit down and watch that thing. The fact what that man was able to do and how much resistance he got from everyone is phenomenal. And in the end, the DEA and the FBI had to literally say it's because he just wouldn't listen. He made it happen. We kept telling him to back off, and he wouldn't. But he took him down. And it's an amazing story. Like the man is. I've talked about my pill addiction in the past many, many, many times, and the fact that this guy would actually talk to people when they came into the pharmacy. If I had just had one pharmacist who actually like had a fucking heart, who had said something back in the day, if that would have changed anything or made a difference, or if one of the doctors had actually tried to treat me instead of just throwing drugs at me, then maybe that would have helped too. But I mean, my biggest takeaway from all of this is just the same as it was when I went through it, and that is that the doctors were so willing to throw me on the fucking drugs, but when I had a problem, they were so unwilling to help me. They was like, fuck you.
Dude, I saw an article last night. So like, I don't know what it's like where you guys are. I don't know if this is just a thing across the board, but here, nurse practitioners can open up doctor's offices. Mm-hmm. And they can't do everything a doctor can, but they can write some prescriptions, and it's usually they're more accessible than a doctor's office, to make an appointment there. And I saw where this. Go ahead.
Well, before you go into that, Matt, one of the things they go into this documentary about is how easy it is to set up a pain clinic, and you don't even have to be a doctor.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, this nurse practitioner was trading prescriptions for meth. And this is somebody, so like obviously a meth addict, and it's somebody that like people are going to see to get help with their health problems.
Yeah. Well, and you find out in this documentary that this doctor that he was going off after also had some issues. It gets so, for me, it got so dark watching this, because I literally watched everything that I went through. Everything. Them talking about how, they were talking to addicts, and they would talk about how, yeah, we would all wait for each other's prescriptions to get filled. You'd have like 4 or 5 people waiting on your doorstep the day that you got yours filled, and then you'd be on their doorstep the day that they got theirs filled. And that's exactly the way it was. That was exactly how I lived my life. It was disgusting. And to see it unfold in that documentary, it's really, really good. Yowie Channel Central. Yes, Para Breakdown. His channel's getting shut down. Phil couldn't manage to not put other people's videos on the internet. You got to take it down.
I'm sure there was a few complaints about copyright on.
Yeah, listen, and Phil, this is no news to Phil. I've told Phil for a long time, listen, you're a smart guy. Stop doing this shit. Just talk about the stuff. Talk about it. Give your opinions. Do a fucking podcast. Stop doing this. Like, you're gonna get that channel taken down, and it's too bad. I mean, I've always liked Phil's videos. I've enjoyed a lot of his stuff. So it's too bad, but good luck to him with whatever he's doing. I know he's starting like a Patreon or something. So I'll figure it out and more than likely promote him. But yeah, the Rick Dyer Hoax, the 50 large book, which I was supposed to get a copy of. Steve, I'm going to bash you a little bit right now.
I know, man.
That I did not get. You did send me some pictures that I did receive
a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, from the book. Let's see if I could.
Yeah, you'd think I'd have a PDF copy, but I had enough hard drive crashes to friggin'.
You did send me a copy of the your new book, which I do intend to read. I'll try to plow through that between now and next Sunday.
Yeah, that one. Well, I just wrote it, so the PDF is right there. Even my second book, What Would Sasquatch Do? I don't have a PDF copy of that anywhere either. It was lost in hard drive crashes.
Yeah,
and I was like, wow, I thought I had those backed up, but I didn't. And I don't live very close to a UPS facility, believe it or not. It's a pain in the ass. Live in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, I'm lucky in where I live. You can see it behind me. It's where I live is actually it's not very active right now, but I'm very close to areas that are. So I'm not far from central hubs. I'm in a very much a vacation spot. So it's not warm right now. So there's nobody here.
Oh, it sucks.
It's dead town. No, it's nice. It's wonderful. I love it. I have this this amazing thing happens from like May until September where all these crazy fucking yahoos come in and they hoot and holler and make a lot of noise and I have to deal with that. And then this amazing thing happens where they all just disappear. And I have this bliss of silence for months. But yeah, so I'm really close to stuff. But you had said you wanted to talk about, break this whole thing down. And I thought it'd be a good idea to do because Steve Alcorn, our resident former investigator, has had his hand in this as well as Matt. And
Again,
I myself
came into later hoaxes. But
I myself had no I was in nowhere near any of this at that point when Dyer had come out with this, but I was around for this some of the subsequent stuff, the Hank,
Stank.
and was there one before the Hank?
Well,
tent video.
Yes, the tent video. But and we've always said we're just waiting for the next one with him, just waiting for it.
Oh, it'll happen.
That's all dependent on a couple of things, but I'll explain that later because I have a very good psychological.
Oh, and Matt, I've got to fess up. The vaping didn't go down exactly yet. I'm working on it. Listen, it was lapse in judgment. And
Alcorn ain't quitting.
No, fucking Alcorn's gonna vape until he fucking drops dead. You kidding me?
Actually, I am considering. I'm considering slowing down because I've been like wheezy for the last couple of weeks, and I have a good feeling it has to do with that thing.
Oh, I'm sure.
I vape on that thing way.
You vape a lot more than even I do.
Yeah.
And it just got to the point where I needed to have some. I mean, I was getting so antsy. I needed to have something to grab, and I still want to get rid of it. It's definitely on my list, and I'm not like, I don't look at it like, oh yes, it's back.
I would just like to point out that you can get non-nicotine vape.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to do that.
So what's the point?
Exactly.
Because it's part of what he's dealing with. Yeah.
Yes, I get it, but I couldn't.
You can
have
like
some sort of
slowly drop the levels of nicotine, and eventually just it's flavored, and then eventually you do get to the.
And I may need to do that, but like I was talking to you earlier in the week, Matt, it's more that it's a habitual grab thing,
right?
Where I'll be sitting here, and then all of a sudden my arm will go to reach for it, and it would happen a lot.
Yeah.
Whenever
I quit smoking, it was that instinct after dinner, and driving. Driving was a big one.
Driving's the worst.
Yeah.
Because you're just sitting there and you're so used to grabbing it, and it's for me it's a routine thing. Like I would get up in the morning, I'd get my coffee, I'd sit down, reach for it. Yeah, and the days that I wasn't, because I went quite a few days without using it at all. And
I've been
over the weekend. I had a lapse, so
I haven't smoked in over a couple of years now, and I still, on occasion, just out of nowhere, get that freaking urge. Just to, oh man, I wish I had one.
I'm the same way. Somebody lights up a fresh cigarette. Oh my god.
Well, we went up to my my cousin Greg, the guy that was on the podcast. He came up from New York over the weekend, and I went up to see him and his wife, and her kids had come up with them, and some other friends of theirs, and his son. And his son actually watched one of our shows last night. And so when I got home, because everybody up there smokes, and when I got home, the first thing I noticed was how I fucking stunk.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh God, because I had wound up grabbing a couple of cigarettes while I was up there. That's what it did it. I had a drink with my cousin. I was like, fuck it, I need a fucking cigarette. Sat down, just started shooting the show with everybody. But I did not smoke weed because people were passing around joints, and that's the thing that I was like, you know what, I stuck to my guns on the big thing.
I'll tell you
Thing
what,
that I didn't think that I'd be able to do. Because I'll be honest with you, going up there, I did not think that I would be able to say no to my cousin.
when I quit smoking, the first two things I noticed the most are how much other people stink that smoke and how good food tastes now.
Yeah.
Those are the two things. It was crazy.
It is.
And
amazing.
then I went back a couple weeks later and tried to have a cigarette because it was a stressful day at work or whatever. And I damn near vomited. It was so bad.
Well, the thing that I notice about him now, like, is I'll have like one or two, and then it's just, ugh.
Yeah, I can't. I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to do it now.
It's not the same. So, but
no offense, Mr. Coles.
Yeah, surprise, Kulls. This is an intervention.
Quit smoking, you fuck.
Well, you know, I quit for 3 years.
Yeah, you did.
I
remember that.
I quit for 3 years, and you know, shit happens. Stress builds up. Give me an effing cigarette, and that's how it started all over again. But then I don't
know how you afford them where you live, Steve.
I buy smartly.
Jesus Christ!
You can't like, give away that information.
I went up for my cousin. My cousin lives in Watertown, and when I went up for his wedding, buying cigarettes, I think I almost went bankrupt.
You got to go to the reservations and buy them.
Exactly.
I don't know that going to visit.
Yeah, but listen, you went right freaking past it, basically.
Yeah, when you go to Watertown, you pass them.
And the gas is cheap.
All I know is I pass people in friggin' horse-drawn carriages in Amish country.
Oh yes, there's plenty of Amish. In fact, our big
Albany to Watertown,
our Bigfoot capital, Whitehall, has been inundated with Amish.
Ah,
yeah, it's kind of funny. We went to an expedition. There was three Amish carriages sitting there, and they were all loading up, and off they went with a big pile of horse dung right in the middle of the parking area. I'm like, really great. That's awesome. That's just wonderful.
We have quite a. I'm not that far from Middlefield, Ohio, which is like the second largest Amish population in the country. So we got quite a few here as well. But
so, where do we want to start with the whole Dyer bullshit?
Well, we'll start. I guess we'll start at the beginning.
I don't know how the whole thing. I can tell you how I knew about it. I'll start off with that. This is how I found out about the Rick Dyer hoax. There was a huge news story that somebody fucking shot a Bigfoot and they had it in a freezer.
That's and I went, what? That's how I heard about it too.
I mean, it just started off as just a satire video, didn't it, Steve?
It did, but they were making a lot of serious claims after, and they were making a lot of God, I don't even remember the videos because it really, those initial videos played such a small part. And with a lot of things people didn't know was, but you knew, Matt, because you were I was actually doing a little undercover stuff. You know, I kind of got myself weaseled into the Biscardi group as a consultant to them. And so I was going around to see if he was playing shenanigans. And other than just very minor infractions, I would consider them just, you know, like, come on, really? That's not a Bigfoot. But, you know, he had people claiming they were, and he was building it up. And then they would put me on camera and say, no, it's not a Bigfoot. Sorry. But I had actually gotten away from that with a lot of knowledge that I had stashed away. Then came the Rick Dyer videos, and Dyer had originally wanted me, please take that picture down.
And it ain't because of Biscardi.
Yep. That's very true, Matt.
I was going through the internet trying to find photos. I found some more. I'll just have to. I'll take it off.
Wow. That was a blast from the past.
You're an asshole. but there's a backstory to that too.
No, we won't. We don't need to go there.
No, this is really interesting because so at one point I start getting into a conversation with Dyer, and I'm telling him I don't believe you, yada yada yada. And then he asks to be put in contact with Biscardi. You know Biscardi, can you put me in contact with him? Well, originally and I learned this afterwards, after the whole thing. It was a lot of the information came out after the hoax got trashed. But anyway, to make a long story short, and there, it gets there's a lot of minutia to it. Biscardi, I have Dyer and Winton on my radio show, and I'm listening to it, and everything they said on my radio show is bullshit. And Biscardi called me up the next morning and says, I'm going to give them a call. I know this is all bullshit because I did this. And I said, well, I called that. So he actually called up a couple of their sources, and everything was bullshit. And that was the last I heard of Biscardi until he said, I really think they have it. Now,
I really think they have it.
Yeah, right. So what he does is he pits the whole thing, because I was a real wild card in this thing because he didn't control me. And he starts pitting them against me. You don't want to talk to that guy. He'll blow everything, blah, blah, blah. Conversely, he would say to me, listen, these guys are real sketchy and please don't talk to them. I'm trying to work this deal out with them, whatever. So Biscardi makes a couple of trips. And mind you, I'm documenting all this. Then comes the one morning where he's out there to do contracts. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, New York time. And he's calling me because it's 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, California time. Can you type these contracts out for me? Yeah, no problem. So that gave me a lot of insight to what was going on behind the scenes. That's right. Joan, get me a Snapple. So anyway, they supposedly picked the body up. They're moving it. I'm calling the team because the team is the only one I know is giving me the honest answers. Now, a lot of people think that, Biscardi's team was in on this. They had no fucking clue. Not a clue at all. They just were told to do this. It was supposed to be thawed when they picked it up. It was frozen solid. They turned over $50,000, which was given to them by one of the Biscardi's investors, Bill Lett. And that becomes a great point, which I'll get to later. So they take the body to Eaton, Indiana, which is about 50 miles, I'd say. It's about 10 miles out of Muncie. So I decide on my own, I'm going there. I know where it is. I'm going there. So I head out and go there. So I get on a plane. I'm in the air. That's when they're having the press conference. I have no idea what's being said in the press conference. Thursday afternoon, I'd gotten an email from Biscardi saying that the DNA was a cross between human and an ape, some sort of ape. Saw it right there in black and white. What actually, I found out later that email was actually phony. It was actually changed by Biscardi to make it look like an ape. The DNA was actually an opossum.
Awesome, yeah.
Right. So, mind you, this is a guy who never out and out lied to me. You could talk to this guy, but now that the game is in play, he's doing nothing but lying. So, mind you, his behavior is changing. Go out. I land. I get picked up by Biscardi's son, TJ, who, hey, he's a straight shooting cat most of the time too. So, I got real no gripe on him. So we drive out there, and then there was these crazy ass rumors, and throughout this whole thing, I was actually talking with Matt. Matt was like my guy outside the inner circle of friends I had that I was telling everything to. I was actually giving him more information than I was giving people around me, and a lot more of my honest thoughts about it. So I remember that evening, and everybody was armed because there was like all these friggin' rumors flying around, and there was a fair level of paranoia that Dyer and Winton were putting upon them. And there was this wild rumor that the Chinese wanted the body and whatever. And as crazy as that sounds, they're looking at it. Well, the boss, not me, but the team is like, well, the boss says that they do, so we got to take these precautions, and he's paying it. So literally, it was an armed camp. So I go in, and then TJ and I,
I'm here to see the rebels.
yeah, well, yeah, it was quite an interesting scene. So here's this. I get there, and here's this free truck, and in the back of the truck, plugged in, is this freezer, or actually it was unplugged. They were trying to defrost it. It's locked with a padlock. I got in, I took a look, and you couldn't see nothing really. It was all very glazed over. I'm looking at going, I don't know. You can't see nothing. So we go back in and we wait. So it got to, I got there probably, I want to say 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't remember exactly which. It was Eastern time, I believe it was in that particular area. And so we have dinner, and I'm yapping with JC Johnson, yapping with Leonard Dan, who were just brought on to do this thing with them. And of course you had Java Bob Smalls back and TJ there, and Java Bob was just the mouthpiece for Tom, really. And Brian Mazzola, who was a videographer that was been traveling with them, trying to, get film and stuff for Biscardi's various documentaries. Now, the funny thing is leading up to this whole thing, Biscardi was calling me, didn't call me for like this whole time. And then like T-minus 4 days, he was calling me every day. And he says, oh yeah, Tuesday next week, I got these guys coming in from Fox. They were the guys who did the alien autopsy thing, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Put that in the back of my head, whatever. I don't care. I just want to, show me the monkey. That was my thought. So get out there. TJ and I start listening to Coast to Coast AM that night. And the big discussion on Coast to Coast that night was the Bigfoot body. And Lauren Coleman was on. And then this guy called up who said that, listen, I saw the pictures. That's my costume. Basically it's been altered a little bit, but that's my costume. And this is the website of the costume. And we're looking, and TJ and I, and the funny thing is TJ and I look at each other. Now it's, we just shake our heads. So we catch a little bit of sleep. Everybody's taking a watch for a couple hours at night, making sure that, hey, that they just paid $50,000 for this thing. You got to keep an eye on it. So everybody took a turn for a couple hours watching the thing, making sure nobody was prowling around the property, which, hey, you know what? Even if it wasn't the quote unquote Chinese, there could be some people that would get information and try to do whatever. So made sense to me from a security aspect. Yeah. Okay. You got to have people watching the thing. So about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm asleep in a lawn chair, and all of a sudden somebody's shaking my shoulder. It's TJ, and he's got the key to the thing. He goes, come on, let's go see if this fucking thing is real, because he was really bugged about the Coast to Coast podcast. So we go in there, pop it open, and now it's defrosted enough where we can start chipping away shit. And I get to a hair, and I pull one of the hairs out, and I go into the room, and I look at it, and actually it was TJ who pulled the hair. I'm sorry. TJ pulled the hair. He goes, here. He hands it to me. He goes, check it, see if it. So I get in there, I pull out a magnifying glass, and I'm looking at it real close. So I take a flashlight and I put it behind the hair, and I can see the light of beam right through the hair. And I look at it. It's tubular. It's plastic. So I'm going, you know what? We got another hair. Let me burn it, see what happens. And the thing just goes into a ball. I go, that's plastic. It's not real hair. It's plastic. Hair would burn, plastic would just melt, and that's what it did. It melted. And so then the decision was made by Java Bob that, well, we should call Biscardi and
tell him he fucked up.
Yeah, you're telling me. Well, see, here's the thing, and
you're gonna put a little bit more than just Snapple in that bottle, Joan. He's gonna need it.
Yeah, he's gonna need a whole fucking case of Snapple. So that was the last we heard about from Biscardi for about, I'm trying to think when probably about a good 4 or 5 hours. So we're all sitting there going, okay, it's fake, whatever. I'm pissed. Everybody else is pissed. And now we're all trying to figure. Now, mind you, at this point, I didn't know the actual DNA results that were there. I didn't have that information. I didn't see the conference. I didn't see anything. Otherwise, that would have been a big flag to me. Well, why did Biscardi send me something that said differently? So at that point in time, I had no frame of reference to say, well, is he just really stupid and believed him and they snookered him and did they take the money? But he did say he saw it, smelled it, touched it, all that bullshit. So that was lingering in the back of my head, but I have no real evidence that he had, he actually had hands into it.
Right.
And that I did a show that Monday night, and that was my biggest mistake. I should have canceled the show, but I had made a promise to tell people whether or not that was real or fake that Monday, and I did. I should have just cut it off then, but I continued on, and people started getting on my case. Well, you think Biscardi did it? And I said, at this point, I can't say he did, and everybody jumped on my ass for it. But I couldn't say anything otherwise because I didn't have the evidence. And a lot of people who know me, Matt included, I'm not going to condemn somebody of hoaxing, no matter what their reputation is, no matter what their past is. I can't say they're involved in that without the evidence. Just can't do it. I won't do it. That's investigation principle 101. I don't work on everybody else's timetable. I work on the investigation timetable.
Well, you also had, whenever that was all going down, you did your show from there.
Right. So
were surrounded by like armed Biscardi people, right.
And well, let me make this straight. Now, at the time, my girlfriend was Becky, and Becky had ties to them, but no real involvement with them for a long time. And the funny thing is as time went over, we never told them that we were going out together. Nobody knew that for the longest time that Becky and I were there, but they had seemed to know that prehand. And the minute the hoax went down, Becky left. Within a month, she was gone with a lot of wild stories. Stories like, oh, well, and the funny thing is we were living with my friends, and she was coming up with stories like, oh, he's been abusive to me and all this crap. I'm like, what the hell's this? And then she was dropping lines. Well, I'm gonna send a letter to Matt Moneymaker, and I'm gonna send a letter that Steve knew about this and blah. I'm like, she was a plant. The minute I separated from searching for Bigfoot, and I attacked searching for Bigfoot, within 30 days she was gone.
Didn't she take like a bunch of your files and stuff?
I know a lot of my files disappeared. Oof. Like I had spreadsheets of their financials that seemed to disappear.
Keep in mind, while people are listening to this, it sounds like this is sounding pretty ridiculous even for a Bigfoot story, but you have to understand that like this is Biscardi's livelihood. He has like lots of rich backers and investors. Like this is like an actual incorporated company that's traded on the stock market. Like This was a big deal.
Well, for the first time live on air, I'm going to show somebody something. If people think that this is a story or think that this is much, what I have here is the entire police file from post hoax. It includes statements. I have a copy of the EBT receipt from the $50,000 that was given to him.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the pictures you sent me.
Right. This is the entire file. It was 89 pages of police report.
I'll see if I'll try to pop that up real quick, Steve.
Yeah, I also had. So, as we move through the story, Biscardi comes back on and says, "Well, I'm gonna have a talk with the boys, and I'm gonna see if they'll give us back the money." A little while later,
let me share that one for some through the PDF. But
Steve, the money did actually change hands. It did go to.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
So Dyer got paid $50,000.
Dyer and Witten, yes,
yep. And Witten, yeah.
Now, they got their $50,000 when the body got picked up. Now, Java Bob went in and Matt remembers this. I actually had this was going on. You want to talk about the play that was going on? That Java Bob comes to me and says, "Listen, I believe Biscardi was involved." Yada yada yada, and then he comes on my radio show and completely flips.
Yeah,
and he came up
the opposite.
Yeah, he said the opposite, right? And the funny
I
thing
believe I
is,
lost my shit when that happened.
you did. He did, because Matt was like, you know what? Where would you? And I sat back and I was like, okay, I'm just going to hang back here and let Matt take care of business, because Matt was like the secret weapon there. He, and I mean, it came down to have about, well, you don't know, we were under fear of our lives and blah blah blah, because it was a guy with a gun, and there was a guy with a gun there. His name was Frank, and I actually have his real name, date of birth. He's an ex-con, and I mean, I've been to all, and we'll get to that, but I've been to that place where they picked the body up. I've been to where they exchanged the money. I've been to the hotel where the contracts were signed. So I've been to all those places. I was at the store where the freezer was bought. I got a copy directly off the printer, handed to Dyer, who handed it to me, of when the freezer was bought, which coincidentally was 2 hours before Biscardi flew in. And you can't freeze 124 gallons of water in that freezer overnight. So his excuse was, after this all went down, and I remember Brian Mazzola asking him on that Sunday, and this was in the final conversation, so I'm kind of skipping ahead. Tom, what did you really see? Well, it was all in ice, and I went to touch it, and they said, no, don't touch it, and they closed the lid, which we know is bullshit, because that water in that freezer couldn't have frozen in those 2 days, solid like it did.
No.
And so it, that kind of me proved it, knowing his timeline of the dates he was there. I think he was there on August 3rd, 2008. And again, I think on August 9th or 10th, August 9th is when he went to see the body. The freezer was bought, I believe, August 6th. No, it was the 7th he was in. It was like the day after. So it was like, it didn't fit. The freezer through that freezer receipt through the whole thing. And I did interview Dyer afterwards. I actually went down to Atlanta, and
the freezer was bought on 8/8.
That's right. 8/8. That's right. So I was right. So he did come down on the 9th, or he come down on the 8th, and the next day when he was 9th, that's when all those pictures were taken.
And right there in Steve's panel, you can see the garden hose going into the freezer as they're filling it with water.
Right. And that was a picture that was taken. Now the funny thing about that is Dyer had made mention that it was actually Biscardi who suggested they freeze it in layers and that make it freeze quicker, and it did. But at that point in time, you can tell, and there's the freezer, So it was pretty condemning of Biscardi at that point. And the whole camp thing. That's right. When I did the show, I did have TJ Biscardi was standing right next to me the whole time. Java Bob was out there monitoring the whole thing. And had I said something out of line, I'm sure all of a sudden my computer would have gotten unplugged or something like that, and that would have been that. But nonetheless, I came back. I started accumulating this information, and then finally it came down to Dyer saying that he thought I had something to do with the hoax, and I'm like, whoa, time out. I went there on my own. Biscardi didn't want me there. But I'm skipping ahead again. It's such a long story in different pieces. So Saturday, he's trying to get the money back. That was, Friday was the conference. Saturday morning at, by the time we called him, it was like 6 a.m, and told him it was fake. He calls us back about 11 o'clock, says, well, I'm going to try to talk to the boys and do this and do that and tell them it's fake and I need the money back. And then a little while later, he calls back and says, well, they said they don't have the money anymore. I'm like, I'm bullshit. Because I got thinking to it. I'm like, they got the money Friday night, and then they had to fly out to California.
Listen, Steve, cocaine costs a lot of money.
Yeah. Maybe on Dyer's side, but I don't know about I don't know about Matt, but Witten. But they got the money on Thursday. They had to fly out for Friday for the press conference. So where'd the money go? They didn't spend $50,000 in a matter of a few hours. So I knew that, and I tried talking to him. Biscardi said, well, here, you can try to talk to him. And their response was, well, we just want to talk to Biscardi about this. because I was pressing the psychological buttons on Witten. I was saying, listen, you're a law enforcement officer, and you're doing this, doing that, and I hear this like talking in the background. Well, actually, from what I found out was that Biscardi was there at the time I was having this conversation, and he was telling him, just tell him that you want to talk to me, because the original plan was, and well, hang on. So the next morning, Sunday morning comes, and we're all sitting around, and the phone rings. Well, Tom wants to talk to us at such and such time. So we're all sitting around in the garage on a table, all in chairs, and Tom calls. They put it on speakerphone. And that was where Mazzola had asked him, what did you really see, Tom? And Biscardi goes, well, here's what we're going to do. But I need you guys to... Now, J.C. Johnson and Leonard Dan and Bill Lett all went into town. They were kind of trying to keep Bill Lett in the dark about all of this, pretty much. They go into town to get groceries for dinner that night. So Biscardi calls, put it on speaker. He goes, well, I just need you guys to say what you think, and if you're going to go along. Now, here's what we're going to do is we're going to say that the public pressure got too great for Dyer and Witten. Now, mind you, this is before the TV show, before the announcement. Pressure got too great for Dyer and Witten, so they're going to take the body back, and they're going to take it back to Georgia, and we're just going to all sign NDAs and say, that's it. So we won't talk about it again. But we got a hell of a story here, and I don't need anybody going cowboy on me, and I know that was directed towards me.
You are a cowboy. You're a loose cannon, Kulls.
I'm a fucking rogue warrior.
You put on that fucking tactical gear. Watch out.
That's right. That's right.
So wait, this was before the press conference this happened?
No, this was after the press conference.
This was after,
before,
okay.
But before the official announcement that it was fake. Nobody had known at this point in time. Except, very few.
So Biscardi at that time wanted everybody to sign NDAs.
Control.
Yeah, damage control, basically.
Right.
Yeah, sign NDAs so that you wouldn't be able to talk about it.
Right.
There was a man that refused.
Right.
I'm going to guess that you didn't sign the NDA?
Well, what happened was the vote went around the room, and there was me, Mazzola, TJ, and Java Bob, and everything. TJ's well, whatever you want to do, Dad. I don't care.
Well,
Mazzola, well, whatever you want to do, Tom. Java Bob said, well, I may not agree with it, but you're the boss. Steve?
Fuck this shit.
Oh, no. I was so angry, I was beyond words. I said, I need a minute. And I walked out. I remember throwing a chair across the front lawn. And when they came out, I turned around with my finger drawn. I am not going to fucking cover a hoax up with another fucking hoax. And they were like, oh, it's okay. No. We understand. Blah, 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 blah. So they had to call Tom back and said, no, Steve's not comfortable with that. Okay, fine. Click. And that's the last I ever heard of Tom Biscardi.
Fucking cowboy.
That was it.
So you're you're dead certain that Biscardi, prior to everything, knew that this was fake, right?
Not prior to everything.
Not prior to everything, but once he saw the thing. And
well, you see, at this point, I'm still like, what the fuck did he really see? Because let's face it, he's known to exaggerate shit.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. So at that point, did he just go down there to say, hey, oh yeah, I saw it, I touched it, I did it, because he's just trying to build up promotion for it? Or did he really know it was a hoax? I don't know at this point. I have no evidence at this point in time. I have nothing. I don't have a freezer receipt. I have nothing. So I do the radio show next day, tell everybody, but I don't have any evidence. So what happens is from that point going forward, and there was people that wanted me to do radio shows and stuff, and I'm not doing nothing. I sequestered myself. I did not post nothing. I put off the radio show that I had. A lot of people turned their backs on me. People left. My co-host at the time left the radio show. And Matt knows. I mean, people were dogging me because I wouldn't condemn somebody without evidence. And
I thought that was now looking back, very reflective of how the Bigfoot community works. But at the time, I thought that was really odd that like it all went from tell us if this is a hoax or not to nobody cares if it's a hoax or not. We want you to condemn Biscardi.
Right. Exactly.
And Kulls didn't have any evidence yet. You know, he hadn't even started that area yet. And, you know, it was an opportunity. I saw that Kulls, you know, yeah, he exposes hoaxers, but he's also fair about it. And even though, I mean, I think it's okay to say this now, like the whole time, like Kulls was in there to uncover shit on Biscardi. He thought he was a slimeball piece of shit, but he didn't have any evidence to support that he was in on this hoax.
Correct.
And at that time.
Correct.
So he refused to go down that path, and Kulls became ostracized for it. Yeah. The community turned on him. His friends, his peers, everybody.
We've talked about that for a long time. That in these communities, doing the right thing more often than not is not a good thing.
No,
for the people involved.
You got to be all in or all out in this.
Well, you know, I look at it from a criminal justice standpoint. It was a good old lynching. Yeah, except for I was the sheriff standing there between the jail and the guy locked up, between the guy locked up in the jail behind me and the crowd. They wanted me to go in there and pull him out and say, yeah, there you go. He's responsible.
Right. That's the thing. It's far less that people really want the truth or the you know, the honest delivery as much as they want you to say what they want to hear.
I think in 50 Large, I think I wrote they wanted their ounce of blood.
Yeah.
They wanted their ounce of blood. They wanted their pound of flesh.
Yeah.
This is a hoax. I want my pound of flesh.
Well, and we see that too today. Like when they come out and if somebody accuses someone of something in the media, especially that person is demonized. They've done it no matter what. And it's happened where people have been accused of something. They've been completely cleared of all wrongdoing, and the public still hold that stain.
Right. But here's the amazing thing. And one of the more things at the time, you know, I was devastated when the community turned on me, but in truth, time, diligence, and truth in finding the truth, and then finally having the evidence to say, here you go, here it is. Now I can say this. The passion of the moment had passed for the Bigfoot community, and they all got thinking to themselves, well, shucks, maybe we were too harsh. Maybe we were wrong. Right. And I did get quite a few pieces of apologies for people.
Mm-hmm.
Across the board. You know, the truth comes out in time, not because somebody wants it to come out, but because it has to work itself out, either forced out or it has to work its way out naturally.
Yeah.
You know, the surgeon photo in Loch Ness, that was a hoax for 75 some odd years until people started dying. And then the truth finally started coming to the surface. You know, other things like, you know, the time Tim Fasano did the Bigfoot Busters blog where he was behind it. Yeah, I kind of exposed that. Well, why is it the same Google AdSense as Tim Fasano? Blah, 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 blah. And then that forced that out. Right. And eventually Tim straightened his ass out. Unfortunately, I feel sorry. You know, he passed away. And, you know, I had actually,
but Steve, I think we all have like the same feeling about Fasano. Fasano was a character.
He was, absolutely.
Fasano wasn't, I mean, I don't, did Fasano have passion? Did Fasano try to get you to believe in it? Yes, but I don't ever look at Fasano and go, Fasano was a fucking hoaxer.
No, not
I don't
at all.
look at him like that.
No, not at all. And the funny thing is that, you know, once I put it out there, he was like, all right, yep, it was me. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And we moved on from that. Even him and I moved on from that. You know, him and I had some great conversations down the road, but even though he's a character, he's funny as hell.
Very hilarious.
And he was very opinionated.
Yeah.
He was, and that was really what made him. It wasn't that he was.
I will forever miss his taxi cab videos.
Yeah. I know. But
Yeah,
you
wonderful.
see, so the truth either comes out naturally over time or it gets forced out, but that takes time too.
Yeah.
And depending on the weakness of the cat you're dealing with, depends on how quick you get information. So what happened was this. I started a tactic that Biscardi was during the setup to this thing was trying to work Dyer and Witten against me and me against them. I reversed it. I had him working against basically them working against Biscardi. You know, because their mantra is, well, we admitted it, and that guy, you know, there's one other guy that's involved in this that really hasn't admitted his part. So I remember it was around Christmas time, and Dyer was on some show when he said something about maybe me being involved, and that pissed me off. The first thing I did was I called his number. I'm like, listen, we need to fucking talk. I want to know why you think this. So we did a tit for tat question and answer session between each other for about an hour. And he asked, the first question is, well, why didn't you ever call us after this all started? We started getting with Biscardi because he told me not to. And he goes, that son of a bitch. And then it was like a bat hit him in the head that he realized that, hey, you know, maybe that's exactly what was going on. So Dyer eventually invited me down to Atlanta. I went down there and he said, he picked me up at the airport. We had dinner. I went to the hotel. He dropped me off at the hotel. He says, I'll be back tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, and I'll go wherever you want me to take you. And we'll, you know, so he did. He took me to where, and I actually stayed in the same hotel that they signed the contracts. And he showed me, this is where we signed the contracts, yada, yada. You got the pictures, Chris. So we go on and he takes me to the store. He takes me to the place, which I saw the video of it. So I knew what the place looked like. And so he took me to all the spots, gave me the information, showed me the auto store where Biscardi had purchased the paint on a credit card. And how I knew I had them was that Java Bob at the time back in 2010, and even right afterwards, when they heard this rumination, when I posted that video of me talking with Dyer about the credit card, do you have the credit card? Do you have the credit card slip? 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 They were the only ones asking me that. Because I never said okay, they bought it with a credit card, but they were asking me about a credit card slip. I never said to anybody I had a credit card slip because I knew that as a private individual, even as a private investigator, I could not get that information from a private business. But they were certainly fucking worried about it.
Oh yeah.
So, because that would have been the real nail in the coffin. Well, there's Biscardi buying the paint, which they painted the face with. So I got the freezer receipt. I got a damn good story. Now, here's an interesting thing, is that a lot of people don't know this, but Rick Dyer stutters. And if you look at certain psychological models, when a person who does, and here's the psychological element, and people who want control, serial offenders who want control, and I would classify Rick Dyer as a serial offender because he hoaxes. Serial offender. It's very similar to other serial offenders.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about control. It's not about getting a kick off of somebody. It's about control. And that's what he felt when he does these hoaxes. It's all about control. I have control of this situation.
Oh, he's the ringleader. He's got his mustache. He's got the top hat, the fucking big tops up. Yep. He's fucking in control.
So you look at it from the aspect of when I was controlling that interview, he began to stutter a bit. And that's when I really felt I got the honest Rick. And he told me everything about, well, they had a piece of this possum meat that, and that was the thing. What he was saying made sense about everything. Stuff that Biscardi had told me, what he was saying was filling in the blanks. So to me as an investigator, I couldn't understand A, B, I was getting A, D, X, G. And as Dyer's telling me this portion, it was like the missing portion coming together. Now I see the clear picture of everything. The DNA. Well, he said to everybody, well, we're going to go get the DNA sample today. He goes, I took him up to a friend of mine who had a dead porcupine or an opossum. And that's where they got they cut the chunk of opossum because it wouldn't easily be recognized. And then while we're in the car, Biscardi said, you know, what you got to do is bleed on it, get some of your DNA on it to contaminate it. Now the funny thing is, and the funny thing is, who was the first person to promote Melba Ketchum?
It was Biscardi. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. Now, you know, a few years later, I'm going, oh, this all sounds familiar, because all the geneticists are saying, there seems to be human contamination. So,
So wait, are you saying Melba Ketchum is a fucking fraud?
No.
Is that what I'm hearing here, Steve?
although there is no, I would say, direct evidence towards it, there's a lot of circumstantial.
Remind me to bring this up again after the show.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you, Steve.
And the kicker on that one is one name, Casey Mullins. Remember that name, Casey Mullins. Allegedly, that's who she bought the journal after, or bought the journal from, I should say.
I gotta ask you. Going
Oh,
back
that's what
to-
the one that she published it in, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. She said she bought the. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I want to go back to Biscardi knowing about the hoax prior to the
Bear
press
back, gentlemen.
But you said, you know, you and TJ were there and you found the hair and you realized it. So Biscardi didn't even tell his own fucking son that this was a hoax, or do you think TJ was in on
Okay,
it
well,
too?
that's a real good point, because it's actually a point in the book
that I haven't read.
that I actually write about Sunday morning. Or maybe it was Saturday. I gotta read the book. It's been so long. But TJ was down by the little creek bed behind the garage, and he was in tears. And he was so angry at his father, because imagine the shit my son has got to take in school now because of this.
Yeah. How old was TJ at the time?
I don't know how old TJ was, but I know his son was still in elementary school at the time, I think.
Okay, so TJ was an adult.
Yeah.
TJ's son that you were worried about. He was worried about. I get
Right.
it.
He was so mad. TJ eventually would deny that, but that's what happened. I'm not a liar, and I was really pissed off at TJ for denying that.
So Tom lied to his own boy.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty fucking low, man.
Nobody knew. But
again, though, it's very indicative. The lies. It's
Right.
very indicative when people get deep in this shit. They don't try to get out. They don't try to come clean. They just go deeper.
Well,
Especially
something that Biscardi was really good at during this whole thing was, if you can imagine, like, basically, you know, symbolically, you have the body, Dyer, Witten, and Biscardi inside a tent. Biscardi did a very good job at keeping everybody else outside of the tent.
Correct. That's why he went to Atlanta twice by himself. The only one that ever met those guys was him about this whole deal, start to finish. Now, there was another interesting thing was to me, I couldn't understand the end game. What was the end game? And then Dyer had the missing piece of the puzzle, and it fit with something I said earlier. Dyer said, I don't know what he was really intending on doing, except for he was going to create a Bigfoot autopsy video and put it on Fox and broadcast it and make a couple of $1 million off that video. And then it linked back to when he had told me a week. Now, mind you, this is in February of 2009 that he's telling me this. And that brought me back to August. I forget the exact date. I think it was probably, I don't even guess. But it was that August before the week leading up to the press conference when Biscardi told me, I got these guys who did the alien autopsy. They're coming in to film the autopsy of the Bigfoot. And then we couldn't understand why there was no scientist. That you said you're having this body and you're going to have this thing autopsy Tuesday. Who the fuck are the scientists? Where are the scientists? There weren't any, because Biscardi knew it was all going to be a sham. It was going to be a sham video showing some people. He was probably going to try to have, the team there dressed, in surgical gear and make it look like they're the the scientists or whatever, or maybe these folks he was bringing in would have their own actors.
And if you think that is bullshit and nobody would believe it, there's still people who believe the alien autopsy video is real.
And it's well, but you see, it's not a matter of who believes in it. And you see, this was the biggest thing. And I'm going to get into the real Biscardi. Is it about believing it or not? Biscardi couldn't give two shits whether or not, if that video came out, whether people believed it or not. It's all about the money that was put into the bank account for it. Exactly right, Steve. It's all about the money. If you think about it, Biscardi from 2006 to 2008 took in 400, and I know this because I've seen the financials, took in $400,000 to put up a Bigfoot museum. Here we are, 14 years later, still no Bigfoot museums. How is that possible? I saw the one when he had me down there once. Oh yeah, there. You see that right there on the San Francisco wharf there. Oh, you see that? We're going to rent that out. We're going to rent that out and put a Bigfoot museum in that. Well, it's for rent. You have all this money. Why don't you do this? Well, I'm still in. I still have litigation going.
Right down on the waterfront.
Right down there on the waterfront. He was.
I've been there.
What?
I mean, that'd be a great place to have a fucking Bigfoot museum.
And probably the best document I had gotten from Mr. Dyer was something, and I like Lauren Coleman, but he kind of pissed me off, always claiming I was a Biscardi employee. Mm-hmm. And, I even posted the 1099 I got. I said, I'm not an employee of that company. I did not work for that company. I was a consultant. I was contracted. So I have no allegiance. But Dyer gave me something that I had never seen before. I'd seen them, but I was not privileged to see inside them. And that was this. And that was the Searching for Bigfoot, in case you can't see it.
And the business plan.
Business plan 2008. And in that, believe it or not, well, if I can get to it, because it's very pertinent to, there it is. Here's the picture of the building on the wharf that was for rent with a little graphics on it to make it look like it's a Bigfoot museum. And that's where they want to put the museum. And it never came to fruition. Why? Because it's just a scheme to get money, period. End of story. That's his whole thing. Now, as far as doing the movies and stuff like that, well, he has, at that time I saw like maybe $50,000 come into investment for his movie projects. But all that does is serve fodder to pump up the museum aspect. In other words, well, the more bullshit evidence that we can get out of the field, like the hand of unknown origin, which is a bear paw, and some track casts and stuff like that, and some, all this Ivan Marx's cast and whatever. That's part of the Bigfoot Museum that we can show. Look at this. This is what we're going to put in the museum. Look at these wonderful movies we're putting out. We're going to build a museum, and that's how he attracts investors. Now, the funny thing is that what I had noted was him paying investor money to other investors. What is that called?
That would be called embezzlement.
Starts with a P. Ponzi.
Oh, yeah. Ponzi.
Right. When you're paying, so you're paying investors to keep them satisfied, but in the meantime, right? Yeah. In 2008, the CFO of Searching for Bigfoot was David Nilsson. David Nilsson owned this big real estate company in the Monterey, California area, I believe. And it's really hang on a second. Let me executive summary. I have it right somewhere here where showing the business description. Where is it? Marketing background. I want the list of officers. It's in here somewhere. I gotta flip through it. It's been so long since I've even looked. Here it is. So right there, David Nielsen, Chief Financial Officer. I don't know if he's at his federal prison yet, but he got sent away I think in 2011, 2012 for a Ponzi scheme. And for working with the Wall Street Journal, the one young lady reporter had actually told me that Searching for Bigfoot received some checks from Cedar Funding, which is Nielsen's company. So,
Gotta love it.
So how does Biscardi get away with this all these years, though? I mean, how it's obviously
How does he how has he managed to not stay squeaky clean? Because it's obvious he's not squeaky clean.
Well, let's look at it. Let's look at it this way. As far as when we look at the one thing I did was in the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, I FOIL requested the Atlanta or the Clayton County Police Department's file on the hoax, because Biscardi kept claiming, "Oh, we're going to sue them. We're going to sue them. We're going to sue them." The only problem is it was Bill Lett's money, and Bill Lett would have to sue them.
Right.
And Bill Lett did want to sue them. But here was the problem. Bill Lett states that he loaned Biscardi the money, which means Biscardi had to pay him back $75,000 within 90 days. That was the terms of the borrowing. Biscardi contends, since the money was given to them and it wasn't a real Bigfoot, that he doesn't owe Bill Lett the money. But nonetheless, the police department put it squarely on Biscardi, saying, "Hey, Bill Lett, if this is a loan as Bill Lett is claiming, he can't file the complaint. He can't file a lawsuit. He can't file a complaint. There's only one person that can, and that's Biscardi." Biscardi never did. Across the board. Why not? Why not?
Well, then people will be looking into his fucking financials.
Right.
Well, no, they would realize that Dyer and Wint would get on there and say he was part of it.
Yeah. He was complicit.
Right. He was complicit in this. And given what I was coming out with, there's just no way he could have done that. And the funny thing is their statement. There is, I had done a press release on something written on Sunday that went out Monday. And Java Bob edited my press release. In fact, I even have a copy in there. And the funny thing is I look at Java Bob's statement. I look at Bill Lett's statement, all written from a police department thing. I read TJ Biscardi's account, all written on police paperwork. And then I come to Biscardi's statement. Biscardi's statement says, "This is what happened." And he shows that, and he puts that on top of a press release signed by me that says right under it, edited by Java Bob. And that was his statement to the police. So in other words, his statement was the weakest to the police, and he had the most contact with them. He had the most contact with them. He was the one who went down there and said, "Hey," he would be the one to put the nail in the coffin to them. But he
Java Bob.
No, Tom Biscardi.
Tom Biscardi. Okay.
Right. But his statement is just, this is what happened, and gives him the press release. Now, wait a minute. What about the 8th when you flew in? What about August 3rd of 28 when you flew in, when the contracts were written up? Right? What? This has nothing to do with that. What about that? That's the important thing. That's where the deal was set up. Then when the police finally decide to call it quits, was when they discovered that the costume, that actual piece of monkey shit behind Steve there.
Yeah, that this thing, people. That thing right there.
Not the one in front, the one in the back.
Yeah, the monkey in front is Steve. The one in the back is the fucking hoax.
When they saw that on eBay, they had gotten tipped off it was on eBay. And it was up to like $230,000. Turned out it was a bullshit bid. But anyway, that's when they were like, "Let's call Biscardi. Hey, do you know your stuff is on eBay?" "No, I didn't know. I had no idea." "Well, whoever's selling it, they don't have authorization for me to sell it." "Oh, by the way, it's up to $230,000. His own fucking ego couldn't get him out of not knowing.
So where is that costume?
That is actually a memo in the police file. about that.
Where is the costume now?
The last I knew about it, and this was years ago, that TJ Biscardi had it.
Because that'd be, I mean, right there's your museum fucking piece.
Right,
You know?
right.
That's one of the pieces you could put in there. The Rick Dyer Hoax fucking costume.
Right.
Put it in a fucking freezer. You could have it set up just the fucking way it was.
Without the guts in it. You know,
No,
without
you know
the
what?
possum.
That'd be worth money to me. Hey, look, this
I'd go see it. Honestly, I'd go see it because I wasn't in the Bigfoot world back in those days, but I do remember watching the press conference on TV. And
Yeah,
it's actually what got me started in Bigfoot is that press conference. Because I was
guess what,
naive.
Steve?
I didn't know.
Guess what? I touched it, felt it, and smelled it.
No, I'm not going to go there.
Wow. You walk in that once that ice went away, you couldn't help but smell it.
Yeah. Oh, wet. Wet
I mean the ego
with
you have
animal
to
parts.
have
Yeah.
to try to do this. The fucking insane ego you have to have.
I get where Dyer and Witten were coming from in the beginning. It was they were fucking with people, and it was the early days of YouTube, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I'm like Biscardi. Biscardi to me
tied it all together.
has always seemed like just this overinflated ego guy. You know, any of the programs I ever saw him on, he just seemed like he was trying to make himself much larger of a figure than he really was. I mean, that was my take on him.
Oh, yeah.
So in actuality, there's actually 3 separate reports written about the eBay sale right here. And the last one states this. On or about Monday, October 20, 2008, I spoke by telephone with Mr. Thomas Biscardi. I called him to inquire if he was aware or involved in the effort to auction the Bigfoot costume on eBay. Mr. Biscardi told me he was aware of the eBay auction of the costume. He made the statement that the highest bid was up to $250,000, indicating he had particular knowledge of the eBay auction. Mr. Biscardi told me he was not involved in the eBay auction. He explained that his people were in possession of the Bigfoot costume, and therefore Bill Lett, Matt Witten, Rick Dyer, or anyone else involved did not have the authority to sell the costume. The funny thing is the costume actually was being sold by Joshua P. Warren. I don't know if that name comes out. It's a big name in the paranormal world.
Is he related to the Warrens?
No, negative.
Okay. Because they're yeah. No,
But-
wait. He has the same last name, but not related.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. And I believe it was actually Let that put the costume up for auction. But the funny thing is that his son was, and the funny thing is I talked with TJ about that too at that point in time, because at that time I was still talking with TJ a little bit. I said, "What's going on with this costume thing?" And he says, "Fucking, I'm selling it." He goes, and you know what? He goes, if I get that money for it, he goes, we're all getting a piece of that because we got fucked over. And that was his point.
Is TJ still involved with his dad in the company or anything? Or?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Balls deep. Now he even has his grandson involved in it. But you know, I would suspect that Tom, as he's getting up there in age, is having less and less participation. You know, and the funny thing is I would notice the change in cadence is that, like, while we were out in the road and Biscardi was not there 90% of the time, you know, where all these trips are being made, it wasn't Biscardi making them. He would fly in if there was press coming, do his little bit and fly back home. But the 2 or 3 days he would be there would be total hell because he is a total ass, pardon my French. I mean, nothing was ever his fault. Everything was always somebody else's fault. He would get off the phone talking nice to somebody and then, you know, cuss up and down at him afterwards, saying, "Oh, what a fucking idiot," you know, after he's talking nice.
You kind of got that idea,
right.
That documentary they did where he says, "Joan, get me a Snapple." Just the way he says that to him,
right.
You kind of get the idea what kind of
guy he is. If you've not seen, it's not your typical Bigfoot movie with Dallas Gilbert and Wayne Burton. Biscardi has a piece in that too that he wasn't in control of, and you see how mean he treats them, and you know how condescending he is to people.
Oh yeah.
And the funny thing is you get him outside of the Bigfoot world, which I've seen him, and he's a totally cool guy. Totally cool. again, very, very close to serial offenders. How they have this two personalities when they're not in that evil element that sparks their
Well,
sociopathic sides.
Well, Steve, and we've all worked with people that are like that.
Right.
We're outside of work, great guy or
Yeah.
great woman. When they're at work, you know, maybe it's the person that's in charge, whatever. They're a motherfucker.
Right. Yeah. And you know, here's the thing, and you want to know how long this battle has gone on. I don't know how or what inspired it. Maybe it was a blog I wrote. I'm not quite sure. But I got a letter from a Searching for Bigfoot board member and attorney, Dennis Kazabuski, threatening to sue me in 2015. Well, you have Mr. Biscardi consorting with a lot of nefarious people. Like who? David Nielsen? I have that in print. You know, so I wrote back to him. I said, you know, you were to remove, you know, me. I said, I'm not removing anything. I said, and you sue me, fine. I'm going to countersue you for frivolous prosecution. And I'm going to turn around and my first witness I call is Tom Biscardi. And guess what? He's not protected by the Fifth Amendment in a civil suit. So he's going to have to go on and he is going to have to testify. Needless to say, that ended that.
Yeah, well, good. Fuck them.
So
like, that's something that really irritates me because I've even just doing this show, I've dealt with it a couple of different times with people have threatened to sue me for fucking stupid shit.
Well, of all people, we've talked about Linda Newton Perry. We talked about Linda Newton Perry last time. She's threatened to sue me. If I had the money, I would sue you for what? I mean, look,
for calling you out for your bullshit. Your obvious horse shit stories?
Which what my second grade grandkid could show you that was bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, that she was one when that got brought to my attention, I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
she is.
But you know exactly what would happen in a lawsuit like that. The judge would be most of the time laughed out of court. Anytime this kind of thing has gone to court.
Exactly.
Hovey polling. I mean, nothing happened from it.
Nothing happened, but
that's it.
Phil wound up losing money.
They both did.
Yeah.
Well, how much did she really lose?
I don't know.
That's the thing. Because I wonder, you know, how much she even had to pay her attorney, if anything. You know, but
I'm
Phil
sure
did
Steve
lose
knows,
money,
and we're not going to ask.
I don't. I don't. I don't involve myself in stuff that's not my business a lot of times.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh well, you know, and I've always said this: when you have one Bigfoot researcher suing another Bigfoot researcher, we all lose.
Yep.
Well,
I've told that.
I stick my nose in shit that doesn't involve me.
Well, I know that, man.
Hovey's attorney was her friend.
We were talking about Dyer,
weren't we?
It may have been pro bono, but I mean, sure, there's filing fees and shit she still had to pay, but I'm sure Phil lost more.
I think we can all like clearly say that Phil lost out more than anybody else out of that deal. It was a sad day, I think. Well, I personally think it was a sad day.
Sure, for everybody.
You know. But hey, Matt, didn't you have something you wanted to bring up tonight?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Just that tone.
Well, it's just the latest events of this past week. I wanted to get Mr. Cole's opinion on it.
All right.
Seeing as, you know, he does what he does. We have a history together and everything, and he is a Bigfoot researcher. So it's been talked about this past week in the Bigfoot world. Expedition Bigfoot. Coming out that it was all bullshit and hoaxed and lies were told and people were deceived and surprise, surprise, it was a television show, folks.
Is that Russell Accord show?
Yeah. So
hey, did he just pull something out of the Bigfoot's guts?
I saw that.
Yes, he did. Steve's just pulling shit out of the Bigfoot wall.
Hey, did you turn about when in that filing cabinet looked like it came out of the Bigfoot?
That's the DNA.
So yeah, Steve, what's your thoughts on the information coming out this week?
Well, I kind of work like this. I've seen it very cursorily. I haven't really, mind you, this week I saw that, but then I was finishing a book this week. And I had an ice storm which lost me without power for 14 and a half hours.
Yeah.
So
Did you wind up with all the internet bullshit we had up here in Maine? Did you guys have those outages?
no. Luckily, when the power came on, I go, well, is the internet on? And everything worked. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we had like some crazy spectrum outages from like Maine to New York. So
Yep.
Okay,
So
allow me
yeah.
to
So
pose the question this way. That's
so
not so
no.
bad.
So let me. I can give you an answer. Cursorily, what I have to do is check the sources on that. If it is legitimately a concern, then if this is legitimate, like this is where it was shot, there's a couple of things. Well, are they having Bigfoot activity on that particular campground?
Right.
Or was it just put there because it was easy access for everything? Mind you, I did show a picture on my podcast, probably like after the first episode or second episode of Expedition Sasquatch, of them walking into this wilderness allegedly, and next to them in the grass you could see a set of tire tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of leans to me in credence that this was a very big operating campground. It wasn't as remote as they said it was. If the team members are going out on separate platforms telling people differently, then yeah, that's not good news.
Well,
but I still got to dig into it.
Whenever somebody comes from the Bigfoot world, I'm aware of who Russell Accord is. I've probably talked to him a couple of times on the internet years ago. As far as him being some big name researcher, not really that much ado about him until he became Bob Gimlin's handler.
And that's not even being a researcher, really.
Right.
Right.
But people are pushing him as a researcher.
Sure. Yeah.
So a researcher in the Bigfoot world who has their credibility at stake agrees to do a television show. Not a documentary, but a television show. They go on the show. The show's bullshit. People find out it's bullshit. Do we come back and hold them accountable after the fact in the research world? Or do we just write it off as, well, they just did a TV show. It's no big deal.
Do we write it off as the cost of doing business?
Right.
Basically.
Because with a lot of things that people are either unaware of or overlooking, season 1, Finding Bigfoot, they hoaxed on that show and got busted. They were pushing,
but was it
thermal reading as
right.
Bigfoot
But that was turned out to be, it was not necessarily the researchers involved. That was actually their editing team,
right,
trying to make things, and that's why things changed from year 1 to year 2. They almost walked out on year 2 about that. So I will give them props for that. But they had the wherewithal to say, listen, if you're going to pass this crap off as being real and it's not, we're not going to do the show. And they got a little more editorial control. You want a season 2, this is what's going to happen, A, B, C, and D.
Right.
And that came from multiple sources. So to me, that okay. So the show lasted for 9 years. Did it produce any evidence? No, not really. But at
8
least
years too long.
Maybe
no, I enjoyed it.
Maybe not. Maybe not. It's just
Listen,
TV.
I'll be completely honest. I watched 1 episode of Finding Bigfoot.
I mean, I've watched a few,
and I laughed the entire time.
Well, it's meant to be kind of jovial. It didn't. It's not supposed to appeal to us because it's a TV show.
Well, yeah. It's the thing that it did with me is it. I won't say that it disgusted me because it didn't disgust me. I didn't sit there the whole time and go, Jesus Christ, right. Old man in the fucking chair. It was more. The thing that really irritated me about Finding Bigfoot was the Bigfoot facts.
Yeah,
that they would put up, or the Bigfoot factoids. That I was like, how?
Well, again, right? Again, that's Hollywood doing their thing,
right?
They're trying to be cutesy and whatever.
Yeah. Because I went out to the Bigfoot Museum in Northern California.
Bigfoot museum.
The actual Bigfoot museum,
a real one,
the one that Mike Rugg runs.
Not the one Biscardi runs.
Right. That he doesn't have. And I met the Finding Bigfoot crew. I met all 4 of them. I met Moneymaker, Bobo, Cliff, and Renee. And I thought that Cliff and Renee were really cool people. I didn't have much use for the other two. Moneymaker like showed up at the end and like right before they started, shot past everybody and sat down.
I had a really on Richter's old show. We interviewed Cliff, I think, on 2 occasions.
Yeah,
and
I've interviewed him.
I feel like he's a pretty genuine guy.
Yeah,
at least he was at that point.
I interact quite frequently with Cliff, and Cliff's a real great guy.
Yep, absolutely.
Bobo is too. The
only thing that I just thought that Bobo was a bit much. He showed up with 2 guys. They were all wearing the same shirt with the same promotion on it. One of them had a ukulele. I mean, I just thought that Bobo was I didn't have an issue with him. I just thought he was too much. It was overdone.
But it would really shock you in the 2 times that I've met Moneymaker on, because I work with a couple of different shows. We sat down, had some great conversations.
Yeah, I didn't get to really talk to him.
And you know what? It was like the first time we met, and we had our differences for a while. And when I first met him, I said, "Hey, listen, I just want let's just put the." He goes, "That's all in the past. Come on." We went in the house to our buddy Frank's house, and we sat there and had a cup of coffee and shot the shit like we were, just like a couple of war veterans talking about stuff like that. Very keen to see what I was doing and the equipment I was using because I had brought it. And then the second time. That was the really funny thing. Everybody, it was kind of like my another 15-minute of fame moment of me. So I'm sitting in the audience at the town hall. I got my team there. Everybody wanted to go. I got Paul Bartholomew there and a couple other people, some of the witnesses that I'd worked with. And we're all sitting there kind of. So all of a sudden the head pops out of the curtain. It was Moneymaker. Where's Steve Kulls? And he's looking. He sees me and he's like, "Come here." So I disappeared from the car, and I didn't realize I was gone for an hour and a half. And we were sitting there, and he was trying to logistically find some good places to get evidence. And I was giving him, and that was it. We were talking about, we shot the shit about a couple other things. And he's like, "So what do you think? Should we go here? What we should do here? What's your thought on this?" It was, to me, it was a great interaction. So I can't say much bad about the guy because he treated me, like a peer. So that's all I can ask for. My interaction with him, those 2 didn't interact with me at all. Whereas Cliff and Renee. Yeah. Oh, Renee is a wealth of knowledge. Though.
Oh my God. And I'll tell you, I had always said before then, I was like, man, they could not butcher her more up on that fucking show. I had always said that she looked more like a man than anybody else on air. And when I met her, I was blown away by how beautiful she was.
Yeah. And the funny thing is who she really got in a conversation with the last time was my son. And my son was at the time he was a fish and wildlife, student. He was getting his bachelor's degree at the time, and they had gotten a long conversation about different biology things. And now my son, and she did give him a lot of encouragement, which I thought was awesome. And now he's a New York State forest ranger. So it was like they were genuine people, and that's the way I look at it. They were genuine people. Conversely, you have a show like the Mountain Monsters, which was totally but we know that's hokey. We know that's purposely done. And, but those guys, you meet them, they're genuine too. And they have their own, they really are, mountain men. They do know how to hunt. They do know how to trap. They got picked for certain reasons. But, they knew the show was a hoax and they never even claimed that it wasn't. Yeah. They'll tell you, we know it's all a gag. He goes, we're just out there having fun. That's all.
What do you think, Steve, about that? Did you catch that video of that kid that went up and went out with standing?
Standing. I did that on my show too with the Gorilla Gloves.
Yeah.
That was great.
We've all been trying for years.
And the word of what's his name? What's his name? Flounder. From Animal House. This is great.
Yeah, we've all been trying for years to catch Todd with something like that. And this dude just shows up and it's right there.
No. But that wasn't the funniest thing. The conversation, I think we had a 15-minute conversation on the blonde intern. Oh yeah, you're showing her the Sasquatch. Right.
Yeah. Oh my God!
Which
What a
stripper?
fucking
Which stripper pole did he find her off of?
holy fuck!
Talking about a dead horse. Just today, I saw like a post on the internet about Todd Standing and his shit, and they were all like, "Well, after hearing Todd's explanation, that's good enough for me." And like, yeah, Todd's got the best evidence, and oh, just ignore the haters. And people still to this day believe that bullshit. And used to, I would go on there and write up a diatribe, like scolding all of them and going on. And today, I just click past it.
You
I
just
don't even
pass
waste
by
my
it.
time. Yeah.
It's amazing. Like it's amazing what happens to you after you've spent any number of years looking at this stuff. How quickly you just become jaded.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this so many times, Steve and I, Matt and I, all three of us. You look at this shit long enough. It's like that what is it, Nietzsche, that says that you look long enough into the abyss looks back into you. It's the same fucking thing with this bullshit.
Well,
you look long enough into bullshit, and the bullshit looks back into you.
Well, you got to look at every. What keeps me going is when you get the real phone call from the real person that had a real experience, and you're like, "Well, what proof do you have?" I've got nothing. I like that, because one thing that we see, and Matt probably knows this, what do hoaxers always do? They always overplay their hands.
Yeah.
Oh,
very, very similar to the way a serial offender does. And if I sound like I have a very criminology side to it, I do, because there is a lot of parallels in serial offenders and in serial hoaxers. Because if you think about it, there's not much difference. A hoax is a crime, although it's not a legal definition of a crime. It's still purporting to.
It's deception.
Yep. It's a deception, and it's placed a shortcut by any means. It has different motives. It has different organizational things. Like sometimes you'll see a real organized hoax, like Todd Standing's hoaxes are very organized.
A hoaxer is basically an illusionist who doesn't tell you that this is magic.
But that doesn't help you with the breaking down the psychology of things. Like you can take a look at a particular hoax, and I came up with something very, very interesting. And almost any film you see where there's a child involved and they're filming something and going, "Wow, look at that. Oh my goodness, that's Bigfoot." That's a hoax. Because if I'm a parent and I see this unknown beast, my first inclination is not to pull out a fucking video camera
No.
and say, "Wow, look how great this is." It's
going to grab that kid and run.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
You get that kid out of danger.
My buddy Chris Bennett got my co-host Chris Bennett got a video many years ago. It was a very brief video, very blah. But the reason why it was so brief was because they had a kid with them, and they were armed, and they were actually said, "We got to back out of here and get out of here. I'm just going to film this, but we're going to back out of here and get out of here." And that's what they did. That made sense. But you're not going to sit there and stand there in awe of a friggin' Bigfoot with a little kid next to you.
Yeah,
you wouldn't do it with a bear.
Yeah, no.
You wouldn't do it with a wolf. You wouldn't do it with a coyote. You wouldn't even do it with a deer or a moose. You'd be like, "Hey, back up."
But that,
it's a wild animal.
At that point, it won't matter that you just found proof of Bigfoot. It matters if your kid is in danger.
Right, exactly.
That is it. And I don't care if it's your kid, any kid.
Right. It's a natural. It's a natural. So when you see these types of behaviors in film that go against the grain of natural behavior of humans, big problem. One of the things that kind of shook me to the core just recently, and this is really a kick in the ass, is that for a lot of years, that picture behind you, Chris, people said that Roger Patterson did not have enough knowledge to construct a costume that was anatomically correct. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the big
thing.
Do you know that's not anatomically correct? The fact is that a female gorilla, female primates do not have a conical shaped head. They have rounded heads. That is not correct. And that shook me to my core. And you know how old that piece of information is? came out in 1972 by a book by a guy who believed in Bigfoot, Dr. John Napier, who happened to be an anthropologist and a curator at the Smithsonian, who analyzed that film. And you know, some of the other things I didn't really wash with, but one thing you cannot dispute is the conical shaped head is used to reinforce the jaws of a male gorilla. That's the whole thing. That's the whole basis of that thing. That's a female. That conical shaped head does not belong there.
Gee, thanks for being such a downer.
Well, yeah.
Steve.
Well, see,
I hate to be a downer, but I'm not saying.
Well, then, you know, it's not. We could say that Bigfoot is technically not a gorilla.
Primates.
They are. It is a prime. We could say it's a primate, but
correct.
You know, not
and a gorilla,
technically
and a gorilla,
a gorilla.
And a gorilla.
Maybe it evolved a little differently, Steve.
Very well could possibly be, but now we're going into that science fiction realm again.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right.
Well, I love those realms anyway.
But my point being is it's just not the gorilla. I'm using the gorilla as an example. It also is very prominent, and it's most prominently seen in the gorilla and the orangs, and they're both higher. You know, the great apes, which this obviously is not a loricide or a lower primate. So obviously, what we see in the higher primates is the conical shaped head is a feature of a male, not a female. And I got thinking of that and going, and it did. It just kind of like going.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's one of those things that you just want to not remember.
Unlearn. You want to unlearn.
Yeah, because.
But you can't because we you know, our duty, at least my duty, is to the truth. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you know,
and that should be everyone's duty when it comes to
I agree.
stuff.
And that's now I'm coming full circle to this. And the full circle is when you have a TV show and you're not putting something out there that's legitimate. And if it's true about Expedition Bigfoot, yes, that's a bad mark on those researchers because they're not out after for the truth. They're out for the almighty dollar and the 15 minutes of fame. And they're not really researchers to begin with the exception of maybe the Ronnie LeBlanc, who I've known for years.
And see, and we all know that in the end, if it comes out that they were, you know, if all the facts point to that they were in fact trying to deceive people and they were like quote unquote hoaxing, you know damn well that a majority of them will say, well, yeah, but we did it so that we could draw attention to the subject. You know you're going to hear that type of shit too.
Bullshit.
They were drawing attention.
Just like Todd Standing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's bullshit.
And that would be my answer to that. Just like Todd Standing. Yeah, because we know he's putting out bullshit. Maybe his motion is to, or his notion is to try to draw attention to the subject to get protection on them. Maybe that is his game, because it certainly isn't for money. It certainly hasn't been for fame, but it's to get protection for the species, because he's always tried, you know, lamenting and look at my evidence. He's saying that to government. So my guess is that his goal is to get protection for the species, and he's doing it, you know, down and dirty by any means he can.
Well, I can tell you when we auditioned for that Spike TV show, Bigfoot Bounty, yeah, I know, right? My goal was money. You know, if you get on TV, that's a better opportunity. You can make more money. Maybe you become bigger in the industry, it didn't matter at that point. I don't think in my mind. Of course, I justified it. I'm sure Chris did too, because he auditioned. We justified it in our minds, but the goal was money.
And I was the cat. I was actually the cat who said, after consideration, and they came down to my house and filmed me and everything. And I said, after considering this, it's not something I want to do.
I'm glad it didn't work out. I really am.
It really was, because what I heard, what they told me is that, well, they're going to be setting up certain scenarios where you have to find Bigfoot evidence. And I'm going, they're going to put out fucking phony evidence, and I'm not going to be wanting to be part of it. Well, and I stepped right away. So I do stand by my convictions.
One of the things being passed around about the problem with Expedition Bigfoot is Russell Accord. I mean, the International Bigfoot Conference. He puts on a Bigfoot conference to promote Bigfoot research and the evidence supporting the creature, and now he's using the show and the fame from the show. He's going to be using that, obviously, in this
To
next
promote
year's
the conference,
conference to
sure.
drawing money.
Sure.
So he's there's a possibility, if the accusations are true, if what people are saying is true, that he's not keeping the two worlds separate, even if he is. Well, that was just for TV, and then here I am as a researcher. Now he's crossing them over.
I think some people can still be taken seriously. Look at Meldrum. How many times has he been on a show where it's been just wrong, bad for him? But yet people still take him seriously.
But then again, that again is not him. That's the editors. That's the editors.
Right.
If you're putting a whole team on a scene that's not the real scene, not deep in the woods like they claim it was, then there's issues.
That's a different. It is a different situation,
because that very simply was, and I remember, I've talked with Dr. Jeff, and it's true. They say, hey, listen, we're doing this documentary, and then said documentary doesn't get made. They got an hour material of this documentary, and like, this is kind of boring. Let's add elements of this, fuckery, and put it in there and splotch it in there and make it into a 2-hour program and call it Capture of Bigfoot. That's why I've been very particular on what I pick to do a show on.
And the whole premise of Expedition Bigfoot was using advanced algorithms to pinpoint a location to go and look for Bigfoot. And so these advanced algorithms that they used and got all this data from led them to a resort cabin.
It's very dubious. And truthfully, folks, the most dubious thing about it is this expert team of researchers that have not been researchers.
Right.
Well, see,
that was flag number one.
That's one of the big questions I have. And okay, I don't know if you saw this happening, but I noticed right before the show premiered, people in the Bigfoot community who I consider a part of the popular kids table at lunch and friends with Russell Accord and everything. And I am not bashing Russell Accord. I don't know him well enough. They were coming out, setting the stage that basically, if you say anything negative after the show comes out about this show, you're just a jealous hater and it's unfounded. Russell's a good guy, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm hearing things like you just said where, well, Russell wasn't a researcher and Russell went and did a couple of weeks of survival school training so he could present himself as a survivalist on the show, and did a lot of bullshit to build himself up as something he wasn't. There was some defense towards the woman on the show, the scientist. I don't remember her name, but people had said some things on the internet about certain physical features she had, and people were running to her defense on that, which I agree with.
Absolutely.
But once again,
but I will also predicate this as well, Matt, is that she is a bona fide legit scientist. So of the whole team there, the one that's the real that has any expertise would be her. She's a primatologist. I'll give her props for that.
Right. She is a bona fide scientist. Was she put on that show because of her credentials?
Yeah, absolutely.
You think?
They
so
wanted
if she had weighed 400 pounds and missing teeth and had better credentials, would she have been on the show still?
Well, of course not, because it's Hollywood. you don't think I've
I'm
lost
just saying, it just, to me, it came across as, hey, and we can get a hot primatologist on the show.
Excuse me, not to offend anybody. Please don't take this the wrong way. But there was a hot offended. There was a hot primatologist on that show. I didn't see one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
fair point. But then the third member of the show was a fucking actor.
That has an interest in Bigfoot.
Because he did a Bigfoot movie.
It's almost like Jack Osborne doing a friggin' ghost show.
Yeah.
Because they didn't like Nick Groff because it was Zach Bagans' network. I'm just saying.
It's all horse shit. I'm sorry, but such a big majority of it is such horse shit. And I don't have the capacity to just go along with stuff like that. I mean, I see bullshit.
I agree.
Remember what you just said earlier, them using the excuse, well, it brings people to the Bigfoot community.
Right.
And that's what Finding Bigfoot did.
Or
You know,
you have to look at your inner self when Bigfoot Bounty was on, when you were auditioning, to think, well, this is a way to make money.
Yeah,
doing
no,
it.
absolutely. I
This thing.
definitely looked
So
at it in the beginning
you
as a
can fall into that trap very easily.
Mhm.
Chris and I talked about, well, that'd be great promotion for the show.
Yep.
You know,
but
Be
neither
great.
one of you guys were Bigfoot researchers either.
not
Nope.
really. No, I mean, we were interested, and I was an investigator, quote unquote.
But here's the deal. So it brings these people to the Bigfoot world. Great. Finding Bigfoot did it. And guess what it did? It brought people that thought Finding Bigfoot was how research is done. Now it's going to bring people that believed Expedition Bigfoot was real. It's like the Mountain Monsters crowd. Mountain Monsters, yes, completely fake, fictional, whatever, entertainment. It wasn't presented that way on TV.
Right.
And it brought people that believed it was all real to the Bigfoot world. So now we have this situation where the majority of the Bigfoot people think the bullshit is real. And that if you speak out against it, I see this every day now. Why are there so many people that just shoot down everything that gets posted in this group?
Haters.
You should kick them out. You should
Jealous.
ban them.
They're jealous.
Every time
They're
somebody
haters.
posts something, they shoot it down. Why are they even here?
Jealous. Haters.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm there. Because I saw a fucking Bigfoot.
Right.
And
Like
I'm telling you that this costume that I can show you on Google is not a Bigfoot.
Right. The sad thing about that, Matt, is the jealousy argument is the same argument that hoaxers use. You don't believe my evidence because they're using the same arguments that hoaxers use. Oh, you're just a hater. You're jealous. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the same arguments we hear.
It's discrediting
We'll be
the
talking
alternate opinion.
shows.
And validating people.
And like I say, I can see if there was some editing stuff that they didn't have control over, and I always caution that. But like I said, if this is true that they got put on this resort and did the show on the resort, that's a huge, huge obstacle to overcome for any credibility for that show. But I have been reading so much negative on that show. And that's unfortunate. And people forget the worst of the Bigfoot shows.
You mean Bigfoot Bounty wasn't the worst?
No. No, it wasn't.
Oh, wow.
No, it was. Shooting Bigfoot. 8 episodes were ever shot of that. It had the GCBRO.
I'm not allowed to speak on that documentary.
See, now I got Matt feeling uncomfortable.
Due to past relationships in the Bigfoot community, I would start a war.
I know you would.
If I ever unloaded on that.
I know you would. And you can't tell me that wasn't staged.
Oh, bullshit. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, guess what? When you're in a fucking hunting stand out in the middle of
And
woods,
there's light.
and there's a blue light illuminating the hunting stand and multiple fucking camera angles, it's not real.
Right. Yeah.
No.
And the last episode where they auditioned the new guys and they didn't have proper fire control, that was like, it was like, oh, come on. And again, it didn't fare well with the viewers.
No, it didn't.
And I'm really surprised, of who that came out of from. But you understand that that's what Hollywood wants.
And I'll tell you, Steve, in all honesty, of all of my favorite monster shows that were ever on, I still go back to fucking Monster Quest.
But that wasn't a TV show. Those were a series of mini documentaries.
Right. And that fucking I've bashed Monster Quest, don't get me wrong. One of the first things I said about it was you can't go out in the woods for 2 weeks and fucking find any goddamn evidence. But at the same time, I would also say I love those fucking goddamn shows.
Great show.
It was done in a decent way. like they would have the people on, like you, what's that guy, Sarmiento there,
Esteban Sarmiento.
you know, the Meldrum,
Yep.
and, you know, I always felt like with Monster Quest, it yes, there was a little bit of fuckery. There is with everything, but that's the show that I go back to when I want to watch something and I want to sit down and be entertained by this stuff. I'll still go back to this day and watch those up. You
And
know,
I will say, you know, there were different. See, what a lot of people don't know about Monster Quest is every once in a while you get a Monster Quest episode where it's like that one looked really staged or really hokey or really silly. That was because it wasn't the same production company doing each episode.
right?
There were different production companies. I had one that came out of Quebec, so they stayed late because they didn't have to follow the American Union rules. That's why they were out there. That's why they camped out with us. That's why they were there. And the only thing they did was they, you know, aside from a couple of B-roll shots where maybe you see my feet running or something that they cut into the episode, which I felt was fair. They had one point in the episode where you see me talking on the radio and there's a couple other members talking on the radio. Well, they were reenacting what we were saying. We were recording the whole thing, so they knew exactly what to say. And I was the only live person, but they wanted to do that to give the appearance like they had several cameras in the woods following us. And, you know, what do you think? That's fair. Okay, I you know, as long as, you know, we have one element that's real in it, that's fair.
You're reenacting what happened, not trying to fucking show something different.
Right. And the funny thing is that, you know, a quarter of it was the actual footage, and that was me talking. The other three guys that were talking were reenacting. I didn't have to reenact that.
Right.
So that was fair. And then they do the reenactments of the sightings and stuff like that. But yeah, there was not, they were like, when, you know, and the director who did that, his name was Mike Wafer. He's from the UK, great guy. And he was all about being real, being on the scene, being legit. And then when we did, he brought me over to the UK to do Truth Behind the Loch Ness Monster. He wanted me to do that. And, I mean, we had a great show there too. We actually cut out the marine biologists that we had that were doing the hydrophones, where we had actually gotten a couple of schools of salmon and stuff like that. And one of the arguments for Loch Ness was, well, there's not enough food source. Well, here's a huge, you know, by the hydrophone alone, we know this is a huge supply of salmon, so that could lend a little more in support. There is food source, but they ended up cutting that out because that was too boring.
Did you ever get to meet the guy that lives on the side of the fucking loch?
Steve Dismore. No, he doesn't live on the side of the loch anymore.
Not anymore?
Oh, no, he was, in fact, when I was there, he was only living there part-time, going back way back in 2011 when I did this, because he had a girlfriend in Thailand. So he would spend a lot of time in Thailand visiting his girlfriend, a little bit on the loch, and then eventually
reportedly girlfriend.
There's somebody else we know that had a girlfriend in Thailand.
Yeah, what was that guy's name?
Rick Dyer.
Oh yeah, you know. Oh, I remember. Yeah, I'm not gonna get that.
No, but seriously though, Steve, when I look at all of the shit that we've had presented to us, as far as like Bigfoot, mysterious creatures, paranormal, whatever you want, I go back to Monster Quest. It was the show that I enjoyed.
Yep.
For all of its faults. It was the one that was done, as far as I'm concerned, the most proper.
Right.
You know, even for all of its mistakes. You know,
well, you know, I can say with certainty that, you know, when you heard people talk on Monster Quest, those were people that legitimately felt they had sightings. 90% of the people on Finding Bigfoot, the same thing when they did the town halls, with the exception of being the Squatch Master, you know, and that idiot and Todd Standing, and they pretty much called those guys out, which wasn't a hard call because they were acting like it was. And then this is the disingenuousness, and I get that for TV. You got to kind of go in like, okay, we're doing this for the first time. You can't tell me they hadn't seen the Squatch Master's crap before or Todd Standing's crap before, and then say, well, you know, after looking at this, you know, I really don't think that this is legitimate. Well, no shit. You knew that for years, but you know, now you're officially going on the record. I don't know. So, you know, with TV, there's always that element of that.
Right.
And, you know, it's such a gray friggin' area And this whole expedition Bigfoot thing, it's very interesting to see how that's going to pan out. And I'm not the one to call that one out, thankfully. I did call one hoax out on Paranormal Caught on Tape. Actually, I called out two of them that they aired. That's another show that does frequent Bigfoot evidence now. Is a show called Paranormal Caught on Tape. They actually had the Squatch Master on it, saying, "Oh, we have this video from Ohio," and there it and there it is on YouTube. Saying, what's that, Alcorn?
Squatch Master. I mean, good work there, man.
Yeah, good work.
That took a lot, Steve, is what he's saying.
Yeah, but the other one was they had this kid on and his father, and they saw this thing and it looked horrible behind whatever it was, a stump or something. And then they had this recording, and I go, I've heard that recording before. It was the same one that I used, that this other hoaxer had used, and it was a gorilla sound recording.
Yeah.
So.
Gee.
But just the fact that a person like Squatchmaster gets on Paranormal Caught on Cape means that, or caught on camera, means that very simply that they're just not looking at anything seriously. They're just whatever it is, put it up there, go with it.
Content. That's all.
Yep.
It's
Content.
like YouTubers. It's content.
Content.
Throw it out there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what it's become. But yeah, on that note, gentlemen, I'm going to wrap this up. Steve, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, no problem. It was a lot of fun. I'll see you guys next week on my podcast.
Next week, we will be joining Steve after our show at 9 o'clock next Sunday. All three of us right now, as we know, are scheduled to be on Steve's Squatch Detective. What is it? Squatch TV?
Squatch DTV.
Squatch DTV. It's the Fortean Slip takeover. So we will be there next Sunday. We'll figure out what we're going to do. And until then, this has been the Fortean Slip, episode 123, the Rick Dyer Freezer Hoax. If you like this shit, hit the little thumbs up button. If you don't, hit the little thumbs down button. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Check out good old Matt Knapp over at youtube.com/bigfootcrossroads and youtube.com/cryptid tales. You can check out us on Anchor at anchor.fm/the Fortean Slip. You can, I guess, go check out Para Breakdown. I don't know if the channel's up. Have fun with that. I don't know what the deal is. And as always, check out our good friend Dred Funn at dredfunn.com and youtube.com/Dred Funn. I don't have your link, Steve. What is it for yours?
It's squatchdetective.com. squatchdtv.com, and you can segue into any of the pages from there. And I'm actually trying to see if Para Breakdown is up. Out of curiosity.
That's squatchdetective.com. Go there, check out Steve.
New book out too.
And yes, he is his new book. Let me see if I can pop up the picture for that, Steve, before we go. Because you did send me the pictures for that. And
the Sasquatch Playbook.
Pop those up through Facebook, and
guess what? I do see the Para Breakdown page.
It's still up. Let me share my screen. We'll go Chrome tab, Facebook, and there is Steve's new book, The Sasquatch Playbook: A Believer Looking at the Sasquatch Mystery Through the Eyes of a Skeptic, by Steve Kulls. I will be checking that book out. He did send me a copy of that, so I will check that out before next week.
Yeah,
and
let me know.
We will we'll figure out what we will talk about next week. But until then, everybody have a wonderful week. You can check out Steve. Are you going live at 9 o'clock tonight, Steve?
We'll be live at 9 o'clock with Wisconsin researcher Jay Bachochin.
So if you guys want to continue your fun tonight, you can slide on over to watch Steve at around 9 p.m. on Squatch DTV. Until then,
hey,